Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. One of the bigger storylines in college football seems to have an answer, as Hugh Freeze is expected to name Payton Thorne as the starting quarterback for the Auburn Tigers. Want to kind of take a deep dive into this Auburn offense, which we've talked a ton about. But what does Payton Thorne bring to this Auburn program, and why did he win the starting job heading into the 2023 season? We're going to talk a lot about that. Now, before we do, again, just want to say thank you. And the Auburn fans, I can't thank you guys enough for rocking with the boys. We've learned a ton from you guys in the comment section. It's no secret. The fellas are extremely high on Hugh Freeze and what he can do with this Auburn program. So thank you guys for all the support. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And then love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Again, I say this all the time. I learn from you guys. I have a blast talking ball with you guys in the comment section. So let me know in the comment section what you guys are thinking about Payton Thorne being the quarterback one. And let's get into this Auburn offense with Payton Thorne at the helm. And I think there's a couple storylines I kind of want to get into. The first one is the consistency. You know what you're going to get with Payton Thorne as your quarterback one. And Robbie Ashford, quite frankly, could not offer that same consistency. And about 2 weeks ago, we came on and said Robbie Ashford probably has the highest ceiling in this offense. That being said, ceiling and college football players reaching their ceiling, the two different things. Payton Thorne gets brought in, and he got brought in for one reason, and that is to give Auburn a consistent quarterback. If there's one thing we know about Hugh Freeze, he's going to be able to scheme guys open. One of the best and brightest offensive-minded coaches across the country. And if you scheme guys open, you need a quarterback that's going to be able to hit these wide receivers. And I think Payton Thorne showed over fall camp, whenever you read about the fall practices and scrimmage notes, Payton Thorne just offered that consistency that guy like Robbie Ashford. And quite frankly, it sounded like Holden Garner was fighting for that quarterback one spot as well. Payton Thorne has started 2 seasons at a high level, took Michigan State to a 10-2 season, which is hard to do at Michigan State. Really, really excited to see what Payton Thorne can bring to this Auburn offense. But I think when you look at it, what does Payton Thorne need to be successful at Auburn? And I think it starts with the run game. When you saw Payton Thorne, have his best season at Michigan State, it was in 2021 with Kenneth Walker running the football. When Kenneth Walker could run the football and teams had to respect that run game, that's when Payton Thorne really started to beat a lot of defenses. And so for me, and I'm looking at this Auburn team, I do think it starts with being able to run the football. That's a quarterback's best friend. It opens stuff up in the passing game. And you take a look at this Auburn run game, not only is the running back room loaded, but I think the offensive line and the improvements they made to the offensive line might be the biggest storyline for Auburn. I mean, we've talked about it. Auburn hasn't had an offensive lineman drafted since 2018. I mean, it is really hard to win games in the SEC when you can't really compete in the trenches. What did Auburn do? And we'll talk about a little bit more about Payton Thorne, but what did Auburn do in the offseason through the transfer portal? They revolutionized this offensive line. A lot of teams wanted to add at least one tackle in the transfer portal. Auburn was able to go and add 2 starting tackles in the transfer portal, 2 of the top tackles in the transfer portal, Dylan Wade, Gunnar Britton. They go out and get one of the best centers in the country in Avery Jones. This offensive line, and this is something we talked about during the spring game, it looks massively improved from what you saw in 2022. And Auburn was able to run the football, not as effectively as I think a lot of Auburn fans wanted to with a guy like Tanks Bigsby in the backfield, because 1, they couldn't really throw the ball downfield, so teams are just loading the box. And then 2, that offensive line, it just wasn't that great. And so Hugh Freeze comes in, sees that. No doubt he saw that on the film in the 2022 season, said, we have to get an offensive line that can get back to running the football. And guys like Dylan Wade, Avery Jones, Gunnar Britton, I heard Connor Lew, the true freshman, is really making some noise. I think you feel really good about Auburn running the football because the offensive line's great. And then you look at the running back room, Jaquez Hunter back with the program. I mean, it is an absolutely loaded room. Jaquez Hunter, Damari Alston, Brian Batty. That is probably one of the better running back rooms that you see in the SEC, combined with an offensive line that's massively improved. For me, that really does spell out success for Payton Thorne because, again, when you go look at Payton Thorne and when he was really successful at Michigan State, it came off play action. It came off the run game. And one other thing I'd like to add, Payton Thorne, he's not the athlete Robbie Ashford is. Don't get me wrong. Robbie Ashford, really special with the ball in his hands. And I'd probably expect Robbie Ashford to get some work in certain packages. Payton Thorne can also move. So, like, when Hugh Freeze wants to get his quarterback on the move, Payton Thorne's a quarterback that is able to do that. I don't think Holden Garner really offered. And then the next storyline for Auburn, is the massive turnaround they did in the pass catcher group. I mean, this was it was a group that, yes, the quarterback play was bad. Yes, the offensive line play was bad. The wide receiver position for Auburn the last couple of years under Brian Harsin, really, really bad as well. I mean, I think there's a reason you saw Bo Nix transfer from Auburn and have so much success at Oregon. One, he was out of the Brian Harsin offense. Two, was he had protection, he had a run game, and he had wide receivers to throw to. I think Payton Thorne is going to really enjoy some of the new names that are in this Auburn offense, specifically in the pass catchers. Now, before we get to the transfers, I would like to just note, I'm sure Auburn fans have been keeping up. Jay Fair, a guy who's going into his second year, sounds like he's making some massive, massive strides. And it sounds like this wide receiver room might look a little bit different than what we thought about a couple months ago before fall practice started. Nick Martiner getting a lot of wide receiver one reps as well. But you take a look at it, and we like to say this a lot, it does seem to be a numbers game. Like honestly, I mean, a year ago, 12 months ago, Auburn had maybe like 3 wide receivers you were even remotely excited about. And now you have probably 3 deep of wide receivers that, yeah, these guys can play some high-level football. They can play winning football in the SEC. Now, starting with the transfer, Shane Hooks from Jackson State, really, really excited. His numbers at Jackson State, his highlights at Jackson State, you always have question marks about whether guys can make that group, from the FCS to the Power 5 level. Shane Hooks, you check out the highlights and from an athletic standpoint, and you question whether he can play SEC ball. I don't think you have those questions. He is a very, very good athlete. You saw that on the film. So Shane Hooks really excited for. Jair Shorter, another guy that really well can hit the deep ball. And that's probably what I like the most, is that you have guys who can really stretch this field vertically. That is the key to Hugh Freeze's offense, is just putting defenses in conflict in multiple different ways. You have guys like Shane Hooks, Jair Shorter, who can really stretch the field and potentially open it up for guys like Caleb Burden, who's probably going to work a little bit more in the slot. So you take a look at this Auburn offense. I think it's retooled the offensive line. It's retooled the wide receiver room. And now you come in and get Payton Thorne, who, I'm not going to go out and say he's the next Bryce Young, but he's a quarterback that, and you give him the talent, you give him a run game. You saw him win 10 games at Michigan State. And again, that is really hard to do. The last guy I want to talk about who's getting a ton of buzz is Rivaldo Fairweather, who really excited when he transferred in. And then he just kind of, every time you read the spring practice notes, you hear his name being just kind of a matchup nightmare. You take a look at this Auburn offense and kind of all the talent that Hugh Freeze is going to have to work with. I mean, he's going to have an absolute blast putting Payton Thorne in spots where he can be successful. I think it starts with a run game. I think it starts with protecting Payton Thorne, which they certainly can do. And then you look at the wide receiver room, and you're absolutely really excited about what Payton Thorne can do in this Auburn offense, because, again, he's a guy that's going to hit the throws. He's not going to turn the ball over. And a lot of times that's not as exciting as a guy like Robbie Ashford, who can make it drop with some plays. But when it comes down to it, and when it comes down to winning games, hitting the throws that are open, not turning the ball over, those are the keys to winning in whatever conference you want, SEC included. And so Payton Thorne, really excited about what he can bring to this Auburn offense. It sounds like the consistency. It sounds like how he can operate the offense really did set him apart. Really excited about Payton Thorne heading into 2023 again. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. And if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And we'll talk to y'all later.